The Knowledge Valorisation platform connects players in Europe with ambition.
Hello there! Do you also find that the research results are slow to reach the market? Should benefit citizens better? Should we turn into more solutions to tackle climate change and other challenges? The EU Knowledge Valorisation platform is there to change that. Have a look and exchange with like-minded people across Europe to make it happen. Share your best example of a valorization practice and get visibility. Be inspired by what others are doing. Join a community to tackle specific issues. Find advice and guidelines. Take part in workshops and events like the EU Knowledge Valorization Week. Keep up with latest developments and background studies. There is much for you to discover on the EU Knowledge Valorization platform. Join us!
Good morning. Welcome to the webinar, New Kids on the Block, How to Make Startups a Sustainable Success of the new EU Knowledge Valorization Week 2023. My name is Troels Jarsen. I'm the moderator of this session. So I'm coming from Norway, Stavanger, and I'm Director for Innovation and External Collaboration at the University of Stavanger. So before starting, let me remind you that you can join our discussion by asking questions to Slido, and you will find the link on the web streaming page. The background information for the best practice presented today are available on the repository of the EU Knowledge Valorization platform, so please look at this. And you can find more excellent examples there and share your own practice. So I have the great pleasure to introduce two speakers today. One speaker is Sylvain Godoc. He will join us online. He is from Ifremer, and he will present Octopus, Challenge Innovation for and by the Ocean. And our second speaker is here, is me, in Brussels, Marzia Mazzonetto, and she is CEO of StickDot, and will present something called When Unsold Food Becomes a Business. Very interesting. Looking forward to that. So we will hear two examples of starting businesses in quite different policy contexts. And so the first case presented is how entrepreneurs can get help by working closely with researchers at a large research institution. And it's not in the traditional way, as you will hear, examples from Sylvain. The other case is an example of a very challenging situation for a startup to navigate in the interface between public and benevolent sector. So I think without further ado, I'll give the word to Sylvain, who will join us from Ifremer. Sylvain.
So yeah, today we'll talk about the Octopus Challenge. Octopus Challenge, innovation by and for the ocean. So next slide, please. So really the challenge, we have a vision with this challenge is to fostering ocean tech startup creation by leveraging on public research. So as Troels has said, we are a big research institute with 1,500 people in here. And so we are doing it by closing the gap with an entrepreneurship full immersion in a research lab. So next slide, please. So our triptych here at Ifremer is research, innovation, and expertise. And Ifremer, we are doing ocean science, like it's a big word, it's about biology, tech, also modelization, all that is related to ocean. In terms of innovation, we collaborate with private actors in two main ways. So we build strong partnership with established company. So we build project with already existing company, for example, a company in the marine renewable energy sector. And we also support startup and emerging company. So for this second point, we have this Octopus challenge that is about supporting ocean tech and connecting scientists with entrepreneurs. And what is very important that the challenge, it's a challenge that is that has a duration that you will see it's an 18 months contract, but really what's really important to get in mind is that it's a long-term collaboration that is impulsed by the challenge. We want a long-term collaboration between the startup created and our teams at Ifremer. So next slides, please. So yeah, entrepreneurs have the possibility to enter in the ocean of knowledge and facilities. We have a lot of facilities here at Ifremer. So for example, basin test site tanks. And so an entrepreneur is hired by Ifremer for 18-month contract in a lab dynamic. So next slide, please. The goal is to detect and support business creation project, developing solutions for and by the ocean, or by the ocean. It depends of which project we select. So we have a lot of criteria for the selection of the project. So we are analyzing market perspective, economics perspective, business model that is proposed that we can reshape after we get the laureate. We are obviously looking at environmental issues. The project needs to be sustainable. But what I wanted to stress in this slide is that we need an interest of a research team from one of our labs. So Ifremer, we get labs all around France, all the coastline, and also in outermost region. So the entrepreneur can go in whatever labs he wants, but yeah, the scientist needs to be interested on the project and on this 18 months collaboration that is going to be a long-term collaboration after this 18 months. So concretely, so we launched the competition. The end of the competition is in February each year. So for the 2023 edition, we are already analyzing the proposal. So the next one in 2024. So the backing for the winner is estimated at 250,000 euros. So first, we have the collaboration, as I told you, with an Ifremer research team, with an access to all our infrastructure. We are our test site. So I will give some example to make you understand what it looks like. We give also a budget for the project up to 60K. So specifically for the project to develop to develop the idea, develop the business model, develop the project, and also finance external actor if it's needed. And we give an employment contract for a period of up to 18 months. So we work with entrepreneurs that still are in the process of creation of company, that company is not created, and also with early created company, like less than 2 years old company. And we give a contract to one entrepreneur, but obviously teams a team of entrepreneurs can access the competition, but only one of the entrepreneurs is going to get the employment contract. And as I told you, very important, I'm repeating myself, but it's important, the 18-month support is really a starting point. Next slide, please. As it is on our own funding, and for other reasons, we have also a return on investment policy. If a patent is developed during the collaboration, during the 18 months, the patent is belongs to Ifremer, and a license contract is granted to the startup for the exploitation of the IP assets or software for a patent. And we invest also in the company with 12% equity in general. But you will see in the example that this return on investment policy is what we aim for, but it depends on each project, what we are doing with them. So next slide, please. So it's the 4th edition that is ongoing this year, after one pilot edition, a first edition, and a second edition. So that's officially the 3rd one, but as I told you, there is a pilot one, so I say that it's the 4th one. And for the moment, we already have worked with 4 projects. So next slide, please. So the first company we have worked with, it's Bluefins. So all of the company, that's also important to say. We think that we have a great link with the mission, your mission, restore our ocean and waters. So we are pursuing the same goals than the mission. And for example, Bluefin has made a pledge for the mission. So Bluefin, it's our pilot edition. So it's Bluefin has created a foil that uses whale's energy, so the energy of the sea, to help proper shield. So it's an hydrofoil, so like a whale fin, so that is called Bluefins. That is placed at the rear of the ships and is animated by the waves, sorry. And so it saves between 20 and 30% of fuel consumption. So it's quite a lot. So we have the company created already. The patent is under Ifremer and licensed to the company, and we have invested, so equity is done. For green, it's different. So green is a project of Jordan Artunians that aim to produce green hydrogen. So green hydrogen, it means without CO2 production. And it's a bio-production of hydrogen with using metabolism of deep sea organism that is not fully understood yet. So that was why we selected this project. So it makes time, as you know, the deep tech. It makes time to develop the idea and to go to the market. So there's a long time to market. So for this one, the return on investment is ongoing. A company is planned to be created this year. But something special happened with this one. We made an AIC project proposal together that was rejected, but with a very high note. But I will come back to that later in my last slide. So 52Hertz is a company that was developing something called Talkie Divey. So it allows two divers under the sea to talk together. And it's very advanced. So the company is created, and we have invested also, and they have used our infrastructure, for example, our test tank. And the last one, so DES, it means distributed ecological and environmental subsea sensing. It's about designing a swarm of submarine drone to map the seabed. So it's the return on investment that's going because it's the laureate of last year, and that began the collaboration in the second semester last year. Next slide, please. So about the challenge and perspective, I have 1 minute, and after I will take some questions to go more into details of that. So we are aiming to expand the competition in Europe because now it's mostly French, but we would like to get more proposal because obviously more proposal we get, more choice we get, and better will be the project. So in Europe and America. About our team inside Ifremer, obviously some team have been reluctant at the beginning, but the one that I've worked with Ifremer, or with the challenge and with the entrepreneur are keen to do it again. So, but continuous effort are needed to raise awareness. So next slide, please. And just to finish, so we have funding and European level issues. So we are financing it on our own funding with punctual support from the French Ministry of the Sea. But we are still open to external funding in order to support more than one project a year. So as you have seen, it's one project a year. Just in 2021, we had 2 projects because of this new funding of the French Ministry of the Sea. About the other issue, we have also the perspective to integrate other ocean labs. So Ifremer is the majority of ocean research in France, but not at all everything. It's more or less 30-40% of the research. So we have also other labs, Sorbonne University, for example, that is doing a lot, Aix-Marseille, a lot of research of ocean labs. And so we are also aiming to develop and to open other labs for the laureate. And maybe also at the European level with the upcoming Knowledge Innovation Community, water, marine and maritime ecosystem and sector. And one side issue, it's about the projects. We have developed an EIC proposal, but it has been rejected. And one of the reasons, in my opinion, is that we have focused a little bit too much on a special provision of the EIC that say that the EIC inventors are granted indefinite access right for exploitation purposes. So this special provision for us, it's a problem because we have our own way to license and to do a patent with the entrepreneur, and we would like to get to the normal IP provision of Horizon Europe and not to get this administrative burden for us special provision. So thanks for listening, and I will take the question after.
Thank you, Sylvain. Very interesting to hear about this. I was wondering, there is a question coming up here. The idea that you are keeping the patent, but the entrepreneurs coming might have a patent too already. So can you explain this, how you manage this?
Yeah, we are taking the patent that is developed during the 18 months. If a patent has been developed before, we are not taking it from the company. So as you have seen, for example, 52 Hertz company, they arrive already with some patent and a company that was created. So we are working differently with them. We are not doing the normal way of that we.
Okay.
Of the condition.
Understand. Just a quick follow-up question also. When you are hiring these people, these entrepreneurs for, well, they say they are having their startups, do you give them other supports, like, I mean, kind of business development, how to develop a company, how to access finance and all these kind of things?
Yeah, we have, so the most important for the entrepreneur is to get access to high-level scientists and infrastructure, but obviously also another point is to get support in terms of business model development and funding model and the fundraising plan. So yeah, we have an innovation office, a TTO office here at Ifremer internally. For my side, for example, I do some fundraising plan in public funding for the next year. So I propose some ideas, and after the entrepreneur take it or leave it. And so we are working with them also on the intellectual property issues and on business model. And we also sometimes rely on external companies that also help us on this way, and it's part of the 60K support.
Thank you. There came a general question how Ifremer is financed or funded, let's say, but maybe if you can elaborate a little about this special kind of funding you allocate to this program here.
So our Ifremer finance, the main part of of the financing of Ifremer is public, so French state, French research ministry. But we are also, as we have a special status here in French. It's an EPIC, so we are like public-private. So we also get funding from private sector in private contracts, and also we are answering to call for proposal at Horizon Europe or Interreg project. And for this specific octopus, we are using our own funding, but it's not strictly linked to what we get from the States or from what we get from, for example, we had patents in the past and we have sold some shares. So there is no clear link with the octopus funding. It's our own funding. So yeah.
Okay, you allocate your own internal funding for this, which is very nice. But okay, it's a very big research organization you have also. Okay, we have maybe some more questions, but I think some of them will be relevant to take afterwards in the joint panel. So I think I'll introduce our next speaker here sitting in Brussels. So you're also located in Brussels. So please, Marcia, you have a presentation. So I'll give you the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Trolls. Let's just wait a second. Yes, perfect, for the presentation to be there. So thank you for the introduction. Yes, I am actually based in Brussels. My company called Sticky Dot is based here. And we work at an international level with both research funding and research transfer organizations, supporting them with implementing methodologies that allow research and innovation ideas to be better connected with the societal needs, but also with the ecosystem where they are going to become alive. If we can go to the next slide, I'm going to provide you today with an example of what we do, how we make these better connections happen. And I just wanted to mention that the example I'm going to provide today happened within the context of a EU-funded project. So the project is called Transform. It just finished in December. It was funded within the context of the Horizon 2020 funding program. And we carried out the activities mostly with an association that is called Be Participation. It's also based in Brussels, and it focuses on citizen engagement. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So the case study that I would like to share with you today focuses on an innovation that is called Happy Hours Market. For those of you following from Brussels, you might have heard about it. It's basically an app. It's an app that allows you to buy unsold food, so food that would be potentially thrown away for many reasons. For example, because it's getting to its expiry date. So the creators and people involved in Happy Hours Market, what they do is that they go around with some vans and they pick up potential unsold food from supermarkets, shops, or restaurants, and they make it available to buy at a lower price than the original price. So it can be both through the app, and then you can go and pick it up at some collection points that change every day. But then they also distribute part of this unsold food to local associations. Why did we focus on this innovation? So the innovation appeared in 2019, and it was created by two young graduates from a quite well-known economy faculty here in Brussels. So to me, it's really an amazing example of knowledge valorization. It ticks all boxes of a great innovation, something that is really making competencies that would otherwise be used somewhere else for something that is dedicated to the common good. So basically making less food be thrown away. It tackles circular economy. It is dealing with a field that is very, very little dealt with, at least in Brussels. The whole issue with unsold food is something that is really still quite problematic. On paper, let's say it ticks all boxes. As if I was myself a funder, if I received this idea from these young entrepreneurs, it's actually also an idea that can easily be seen as something very sustainable. The two persons who created it are very knowledgeable in how to make a business work, because that was at the core of their studies. So their knowledge can be really exploited to make something like such type of innovation be sustainable in the future and not be dependent on funding, on private and public funding. So when it was created, this Happy Hours Market innovation idea received a lot of seed funding, so to a lot of public, quite a good amount of public, so from public agencies, but also private organizations decided to fund this initiative, because as I said, it looked really great on paper, and it still does. It exists, and I think, personally, I think it's a really great initiative. But there was a big but, actually. If we can go to the next slide. Unfortunately, when the innovation appeared in the ecosystem where it was going to be active, it became very disruptive, but also very problematic. Why? Because, of course, this innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. It actually appears in an ecosystem, that's how we like to call it, that is very complex. So in Brussels, there are a lot of local associations, non-for-profit association charities that have been active in the management of unsold food since a really long time. Some of them actually having dozens of volunteers, and most of them actually not receiving any funding for the work they do. This is because the unsold food field is something that is not really recognized anywhere. There are no specific funding streams in any public agency in Brussels that actually support the management of unsold food. So these associations, they do this on their own mostly. So at the same time, they make it so that a lot of food is not thrown away, but they also distribute this food to a lot of local disadvantaged publics. So what happened there? The main issue that we identified, and for this we worked with the local public agencies in Brussels, is that there is a big lack of instruments to assess or support innovations, to understand and anticipate impacts on the ecosystems they will appear in. Despite many efforts, despite a lot of attempts that are being done to assess this, it's still something, what is looked at the most is the sustainability of the idea, but not the impact it will have on other actors that are already active in the field. So what happens is that rather than supporting potential co-development processes, so involving stakeholders that are already active in the field where the innovation is going to be, impacting, then often what happens is that there is a lot of crisis management to do because the situation can get really complex. If we can go to the next slide, please. So when we were presented with this situation, it was a really complex one. The local actors involved, they were literally, and I'm not exaggerating, they were using the word at war. They did not want to be in the same room together. They were really a very conflicting situation. So what we wanted to do was to implement an approach that could allow to, in a very quick and agile way, we know that innovations cannot take a long time to reflect on these things, to perform some multi-stakeholder engagement, which was, from what I heard, also mentioned from previous speakers. And these processes ideally can be implemented in the future by public and private funders to try and avoid such type of situations. What is quite peculiar about what we did is that we also involved users, which are almost never involved in this type of assessment. Even when there are thorough analysis before an innovation gets to market, users are mostly involved in a quite passive way about how they will use this innovation. In our case, we really involve them with a very active role, and we try to include them in looking into potential solutions. A lot of very interesting ideas came up during interactions with them. I won't have time to go into details now, but if you would like to know more, don't hesitate to get in touch. So we run around 5 to 6 workshops involving separately different type of stakeholders. On one side, users, so users of the apps, but also users of the local associations providing foods. We involved public authorities, so local agencies that fund this type of innovations. We involved researchers, so experts who could give us also some, share with us some knowledge around the field of unsold food. We, of course, talked with the private sector. A lot of type of businesses are involved in this type of situation, and with the local association, so charities that were already active before the innovation appeared. The process was very interesting. We managed to bring together all these actors at the end of the process and show a lot of interesting common ground that can be used in the future to overcome the challenges that are there. So overall, the process allowed in a relatively short time, so the core of the process took around 3 months, and it involved in total around 50 persons in between the users and the different type of other stakeholders. It brought a lot of legitimization to all the actors involved. There is a tendency often from, for example, the local associations or the private initiatives to say, we know really well our users, we know our targets, we know what they need. And actually, this can be even better explained when users are included in the process. There was a really interesting process of contextualization, and we got to a point where we can optimize the resources in the future. And if we go to the next slide, I have just a few takeaway messages for you from the process that we run. Something that was very peculiar about it was the engagement of the users, as I mentioned before. This was quite unique. It had never happened in similar processes before, at least in the local context where we were operating. It's always perceived as something a bit scary, but it's actually very useful. So the views of the users can really help to strengthen the societal relevance and the uptake of the innovation. Also, what we try to advocate through this process is that it would be much better to do it at an early stage of the innovation process. So, as I said before, in this case, we were doing it a bit as a crisis management, but if it's done before the innovation gets to the market, it can be extremely valuable. But for this to happen, there really needs to be a change in the way that potential knowledge valorization ideas are assessed, but also by whom. None of the experts or none of the evaluators who were involved, both in the public and private sector, to estimate whether this innovation was a good one and should happen, thought about or identified their potential clashes and the crisis it would generate. And probably if, for example, users or the charities were involved in this assessment process, this would have been very easily identified. And finally, also for all this to happen, we think that the mechanism in which the knowledge valorization is supported, so we really push a lot for researchers and entrepreneurs to be more brave and go into knowledge valorization processes, but there is a big need to adopt ecosystem approaches, as we like to call them, that will enable them to actually perform such type of processes. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Martia. That was very interesting to hear. Quick question, this entrepreneurial company, where are they now?
So they are still there. They are doing quite well, but they are still struggling because at the end of the day, at least in our case, the only ones who can decide what happens and how it happens is the public sector, so the ministries and the public agency governing the field. So despite the attempts, there is still not a clear view on how things should advance. There is going to be probably an attempt at a strong legislation around it, which in my view is not a good solution. But there is this conflict, let's say, between the charities and the private companies not over yet. There is a big potential to solve it, and there is a clear need for all these innovations to be there, the bottom-up one and the private one, but there is still a lot of work to do.
Thank you. So we'll now have a brief joint session with the two speakers. Please come up with more questions you have. Some questions are coming up in the Slido we see. I will maybe reiterate briefly with Sylvain. So one question coming up is, how is it open for, how are you going to develop this program outside of France, to say it like this?
So I'm on Slido. The question first was, is the challenge open now for the part of the world except Europe and America? Yeah, it's open for all the world, and I will add it's open for participants from all over the world, but also we are open for funding coming from all over the world in order to have more laureates each year. So it's a two-way perspective. For the future, so we are designing right now a strategy about to get global with our competition, with our challenge. So first, it will be a translation of of the rules of the challenge, but also we are thinking about other action. And my participation today to this event is part of it. Obviously, to make this challenge more better known in Europe and in the world.
Okay. Marta, a question for you also. How would you reform the way startup funding is given, now based on your experience in Brussels?
That's a great question, and I wish I had that opportunity. So my answer would be to make it possible for such type of multi-stakeholder engagement processes to happen. As I mentioned before, this is something that does not take long. It can really be done in a very fast way. But a potential future innovation should be talking to the actors that it will be dealing, that it will be, whether it wants it or not, that it will be interacting with as soon as it becomes something real. So there are really great ways to make this happen in a short time, in a very agile way. And I think the pressure should be something shared, so both at the same time the researchers and entrepreneurs should be provided with better skills. So capacity building should be definitely something key to make them aware of this type of issues. But I think professionals that know how to make this happen should also be made available, let's say, in startup funding, in knowledge valorization process, for this dialogue and this assessment of the ecosystem to happen in the right way. So I think supporting both these aspects would be key to enhance startup funding.
Thank you. Do you think that let's say, the methodology you have learned here, the approaches, you have made some guidelines, could be used for other this kind of processes where entrepreneurs are running into the middle of a challenge between the public, the private, the rules, and so forth? Do you think this can be rolled out? Or?
Yes, definitely. I think the approach that we use, it's a relatively simple one if we look into it. The methodologies that we use are quite classic one in social sciences, and they can be relatively easily adapted to each local context. So there is, of course, the need at the beginning to understand what are the specificities also of the ecosystem we are dealing with. But they can be really easily adapted to different type of contexts. And maybe I'm a bit extreme with this, but I think they can be useful. There is a sort of common sense that I hear a lot saying, no, but there are fields where this is not needed. There are specific areas where it's too technical, it's too specific, it's not needed. And I think it could be beneficial. My personal experience is that it can be beneficial in a lot of fields. It's not something specific to innovations or value creation processes that are very close to society. I think they are beneficial at all levels.
Yeah. That's the beauty of social sciences. They can be applied so many places.
Yes.
You have a question here, a very specific question. I don't know if how did you align the needs of different stakeholders in your multi-stakeholder management? The GOWIN approach in Germany. I don't know that, so you know it? No?
No.
Okay, so that might be a little difficult, but it was more probably to address this approach of multi-stakeholders. You said you made a lot of workshops.
Yeah, so a key aspect for us was to start by keeping stakeholders separate. It really doesn't work, especially when you're already in a crisis situation, to bring everyone around the table and hope that people will get along and find solutions together. So the first step for us was to spend a lot of time talking to the different stakeholders separately, and this also allows them to express themselves freely and openly. I'm sure the users that we involved would not have talked in the same way if people from public agencies or even local associations where they go pick up the food were there. So this is really was the first step for us to identify what we call a common ground. So then to bring these actors together, but to show them that what they see as themselves, they see each other as very different, as wanting very different things, wanting to make profit, wanting to be very ethical. But in the end, we managed to really find this common ground, this the fact that they were all more or less fighting and aiming for something better for the planet, something better for the people living in the city, etc. And they were all at the end advocating for a better management of this field. So in this case of unsold food, which is quite chaotic at the moment. And that's where when you create this common ground, this sort of sparkle that brings people together and realize that they can all have a place there, that's where you can really start building, co-creating, co-developing, even new solutions. From what we did, there could be great, you could easily see even great new ideas that could be developed.
So potentially a lot of new entrepreneurs coming.
Yes. Definitely.
Sitting at home today and maybe say, I would like to do this.
Yeah.
That sounds very good. Yeah.
Of course.
Sylvain, I also have a question for you, which is more about the staff. I mean, recruiting staff for helping these startups. I mean, you are using your own staff, or how does that work? I mean,
so that's a good question about the staff. As I told you, we are hiring one laureate, either if this is a team that is managing the project or only one person. I mean, when the company is already created, like when it's an early stage company, less than 2 years old, but already created, in general, they have some staff and they are in a little bit advanced. So Ifremer is not really engaging with this issue. However, when it's an idea, like for example, with Green, that it was one entrepreneur that came to us and with no company created. Yeah, we are giving some advice, but it's better to work at least 2 people to advance with the company. So one more in link with the technological development in deep tech, and another one more into business and marketing issues. But yeah, during the 18 months of contract, the entrepreneur can rely on us, on our TTO office and our European Affairs Department office also. But yeah, for the next steps, yeah, obviously we need to take staff on board, and sometimes it's difficult to find the right person to go with a project that is sometimes very personal. Like you, for example, some entrepreneur are going with their own idea, and it's difficult to share it sometimes. But at Ifremer, we try to say that yeah, it's okay, but you need to work in team because you advance better in team. And for example, for Green, the entrepreneur has made a European EIC proposal, and an EIC proposal, obviously, it's a team. So the scientist in the Ifremer lab, but he also made the proposal with German colleagues, Norwegian colleagues, and so that's building a proposal. It's not staff, but it's putting people around the table also and work together.
Thank you. We still have a few minutes, but I have a question for both of you, which is related to financing or capital raising. I mean, Sylvain, you explained how you are using your own funds, but if you want to extrapolate this very interesting program, you need much more funds. Where will you go?
Exactly.
To the EU, to EIC, to the European Investment Bank. And Martin, you showed an example of quite different level, but still, these young entrepreneurs, they also need fund. Have you thought about kind of models, or will you knock on the door for the Commission or some of their systems? Sylvain first.
Yeah.
Briefly.
So yeah, excellent question about the funding. It will depend. Each project has some different funding necessity. You will not need the same amount of funding for 52Hz that is developing the talkie divey to talk under the sea because it's the technology itself doesn't cost a lot, so they can go into the market quite quickly with some national funding, maybe with some regional help, also with because we have also in France we have the BPI that is kind of helping a lot all the deep tech companies. But for example, for green, that is about it's a lot of funding that is needed because you are producing green hydrogen and you need to test it at a small level. So we are doing it at Ifremer, but after all, you need to scale up, and that's where a big funding are necessary. And so EIC was a solution for example, but we have also have funding with the BPI in France that can help also to scale up. And really, we are helping, we are supporting companies that have a sustainable business model, so that are answering to key current issues, contemporary issues. So it's about environment, so it's about energy, it's about it's about for Bluefin, it's about avoiding too much fuel consumption in the maritime transport sector. So this sector in general, they are funded, and also you have there is a fund that Ifremer is supporting, the Blue Ocean Fund of Sven Partners, and so it's an investing fund that is funding project in a later stage. So we are also bringing our project to this fund sometimes.
Thank you, Sylvain. If you have a key message?
I will answer in 30 seconds. So I won't answer about the aspects of where this innovation should look for funding, because it's not my field of expertise, but I will specifically focus on where should the funding be for implementing this multi-stakeholder engagement within the innovation creation. And my answer would be that it doesn't need specific funding. It should be embedded, integrated in the way knowledge valorization is supported. So wherever this innovation look for funding, whether it's private, whether it's public support, this sort of I'm not going to say obligation, but at least request and supporting of ways of looking into their ecosystem they will appear in, and potential impacts should be really integrated within already existing support mechanisms.
Thank you. Thank you for all the good insights you came here. I will close this ceremony by thanking you all by following this webinar, New Kids on the Block, How to Make Startups a Sustainable Success, at this Valorization Week. So please join us again tomorrow at the Intellectual Assets Day with many interesting sessions. Thank you.